Hi, my name's Lori, and I'm 51 years old. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, to a single mother. Um, I consider myself as having a normal childhood. I don't know who my real father is. Um, my sister, I have a younger sister, is 3 years younger than I am. Um, Her father was the one who raised me. That's who I knew as dad. Um, uh, I feel like I grew up in a normal childhood, no physical abuse, no sexual abuse. Um, Maybe a little bit of emotional abuse, as I felt like I wasn't really wanted by my dad. But other than that, my childhood was normal. Uh, I was a mommy's girl, is what I always kind of label myself as. My grandparents, I was really close to my grandparents and my cousins. Uh, my sister and I, when we were younger, didn't really get along. We were two Geminis, so it was like four personalities in one house for my poor mother. Um, I didn't come from a household where alcohol or drugs were prevalent. My my dad was an alcoholic, but growing up, he didn't drink. He had been diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver when I was really young. So the majority of my childhood, there was just no alcohol in the house. I don't have any family members that I know of that are addicts. Uh, I don't know my real father, so there might be some there. Um, but yeah, my childhood was pretty normal. Sometimes I felt a little different than everybody else. I was a shy, quiet kid. So I was really close with my grandparents. And my grandfather passed away in 1984, and I didn't really deal with it very well. I was never, I didn't know how to process death very well. So I kept very quiet and I kept all my emotions inside. And him passing away affected me a lot because I was really close to him. For my young childhood, I was against alcohol, drugs. It was the age of dare, just say no. After he passed away, a few months after that, I attended my first high school party, which was actually held by a kid whose dad was one of the Reading police officers. It was kind of funny. So that started my drinking, and I feel like me not being able to deal with the death of my father took me there, and I enjoyed having the altered states, I guess, not feeling anything. I just continued on throughout my school year, drinking on the weekends, after football games, before dances, at parties. And like I didn't really feel like I fit in anywhere. I didn't know like where I felt I fit in, so I started having parties because I felt like people would like me. So I actually started having high school parties that were very well known. And that helped me fit in a little bit better. Um, Out of high school, I I passed, I graduated, but I wasn't a grade A student, I guess. But I passed. Uh, After high school, I wanted to join the military, but I had to lose some weight, so I didn't do that. I wanted to join the military, become a military police, and I wanted to become a cop afterwards. So I didn't do that. So I decided to take the summer off and decide what I wanted to do. Well, that summer ended up becoming pretty much next few years of just partying, drinking, smoking weed. I smoked weed for the first time my senior year in high school. And that was pretty much what I did throughout most of my 20s, just social drinking, smoking weed every day. I held down a job, many different jobs, but I held down a job. I was never really great at paying my bills, but I got them paid. And pretty much my life was in my mind was fine. My social drinking, my smoking weed every day, it didn't keep me from working. It didn't keep me from succeeding in life to the best of my abilities then. So that takes me through my 20s. In my 20s, my drinking and smoking weed also kind of helped me get through my sexual orientation. I was afraid to come out. I was afraid that my friends wouldn't like me. I was afraid my mother would disown me. So I kind of lived a lie through most of my 20s. I finally came out. I was 27, I believe, 26 or 27. I finally came out, and it was like no big deal. My friends were like, okay, yeah, we already knew that. So that was a relief. My sister, my mom knew, my friends knew, so that was a relief. And my life was just continuing on. Had a job, had my own apartment, moved out, and and I had reached out to a lesbian support group. So then I met some people, some friends who kind of took me to a whole nother life a little bit, like where I felt a little bit more accepted and where I didn't have to lie. And pretty much throughout my, until 2002, my life, in my eyes, was pretty normal. Just social drinking, smoking weed. In 2002, I got really horrible news that my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer. And that is the turning point of my life, was 2002. I drank more, smoked more, experimented a little bit with cocaine. That cocaine actually ended up becoming not just a once-a-year thing on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. It became an almost daily thing. For about a year of my life, which was between 2003 and 2004. It numbed the pain of my mom suffering through chemo, through cancer, and at the time, I was using cocaine more than I'd ever done before in the past. It was getting a control on my life. I wouldn't pay my bills. My mother was in a nursing home at the time, and getting high was more important than going to see her. I did not process the whole chemo, getting sick thing very well at all. In March 2004, my mom passed away. A few weeks after that, I started having some issues with my heart, and it was the stimulants, it was the cocaine, and I stopped it like that. It was like switching off a light switch. I stopped it immediately, but I still was not processing the death of my mother very well. And so I started to drink more, which drinking was not for me at all. And then I discovered pain pills. And that was it. That was the drug that would numb the pain of my mom passing away. I didn't have a hangover, so I got them from my family doctor, and when he had told me that he could no longer prescribe them to me, I needed to see a pain specialist. I made up back pain and was diagnosed with fibromyalgia just to get me into the pain specialist. So this is about 2005 is when I started seeing the pain specialist. So 2005 to 2009, I was getting pain pills, Vicodins, from the pain specialist. I'd get them from my gynecologist. I'd get them from my dentist whenever I could, and I was still getting them on occasion from my family doctor. And like, if that wasn't enough, I went to ERs, I went to just about every urgent care in Cincinnati and in northern Kentucky, actually. And I would go to different pharmacies every time to get my prescription filled. Knowing that this wasn't right, I didn't really know it was illegal, but I knew it wasn't right, and I knew what I was doing was wrong. So I had an apartment, and I had a great job with a construction company, but my depression from losing my mother and not being able to process it, I missed a lot of work. And I can't believe that this company kept me on for as long as they did. But 2007, I lost my job with them. I had been there for 4 years. So that had finally caught up with me. I was still seeing the pain specialist. Still had my apartment, but barely. I say that I stole from my family. I didn't physically steal anything at the time from my family, but I stole from them because I would lie to them about what I needed money for. I would lie to them that, at first I lied to them that I didn't get fired. I didn't get fired. I got laid off. So I was just waiting for my unemployment check to come. So I needed some money for rent, and that money never went to rent. So I was stealing from my family, but not without physically stealing anything from them. I was lying to them. So I held on to my apartment until 2007, almost 2008, I believe. My landlord was somebody that I knew from Reading. He was actually a retired Reading police officer. And he didn't want to file eviction paperwork against me. He didn't want to do that to me, but he told me that, he couldn't continue on with me living there and not paying rent. So he had to kick me out. I went to live with a friend where I was expected to get a job and work and pay rent and eventually save up. And I was unable to do that because my money went for pain pills. Still seeing the pain specialist and any doctor that I could get a prescription from, still at the time. And that still wasn't enough for me, that I ended up buying them off the street as well. She eventually got sick of me, kicked me out. I couch surfed for a little bit, stayed in a hotel for a little while. 2009, cut to 2009. My doctor shopping caught up with me. I was getting these phone calls from a detective, and all they say that they needed to talk to me, and I'm like, why do they need to talk to me? That's crazy. So I just ignored their phone call, and eventually, finally, they got a hold of me, and she told me what it was. I had a doctor turn me in. I believe it was my family doctor. Turned me in. So I was cut off from, just like immediately, I was cut off from the pain specialist. I was cut off from the family doctor, the gynecologist, the dentist. The detective told me to come down and just turn myself in. Since it was my first charge, she said that it'd be no jail time, just a quick booking, and that's what it was. I went down to the Justice Center, turned myself in, was booked, and then released. So this was 2009. This was October 2009. My first court date was like November 2009, and I went before Judge Burke, which is Hamilton County's drug court judge. I was sentenced in lieu of conviction. So if I went to, I took IOP classes, dropped clean for a year, that my charges would be dropped if I successfully completed the program. At the time, I was homeless, couch surfing still. I went through a very long withdrawal off of pain medication alone in a friend's house. At the time, they had moved, and they gave me an opportunity to stay there for a while and fix this house up for them to sell. So I had a place to stay for a little bit. So this started me with drug court. This was 2009. Um, and I thought this would be an easy process. I, I was like, this is a breeze. I just go to these, I just go to these classes and just do what I'm supposed to do. And this is going to be simple. And this is blessing in disguise. This is what I needed. I knew that I had a problem. I just didn't know how to go about fixing it. And I took this as an opportunity. Like I said, a blessing. And so I started on with drug court, going to IOP classes, which wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. Let's see. I think the first thing, my first probation violation was, I believe, driving, because I had lost my license probably about a year before that, because I didn't realize that my license was actually on hold from the city of Reading for an unpaid ticket. So I had got a speeding ticket. So I didn't know, because I was homeless, so I wasn't getting my mail from the city of Reading. So that was my first probation violation. Got me one night in jail. I was continuing on with my IOP. After I was staying at my friend's house and helping rehab that, when that was done, I then became homeless again. And another friend who was in recovery in AA took me in. And while I was there, she had had some pain medication from dental work. And I found it. And I ended up taking some of those. I actually told on myself with drug court. So that didn't give me a probation violation, but it set me back a little bit in my classes. I had to go back to the beginning. So we continue on with this. One of my requirements was to get a job, so I did get a job. I got a job. I ended up renting a room from a lady, so I had housing. I had a vehicle at the time. Now I ended up using, and this time I did not use pain medication. I was looking for pain medication, but everybody in drug court pretty much were doing, it was heroin. So that was the only thing I found. So this was my first time doing heroin. Probably lasted about a month, maybe a little bit more than a month, and I dropped dirty. This got me put into a halfway house in Cincinnati. Another night in jail, probation violation. So again, here I am, trucking along in drug court, and I couldn't stay. I continued having probation violations for stupid things, not having a cell phone when I wasn't supposed to have a cell phone, being in other girls' dorms when I wasn't supposed to be in other girls' dorms. The cell phone part got me, that was going to get me in River City, but I ended up running from drug court, running. Let me see, this was probably 2011, I think by then. I was in Pathways for a long time. Let me skip back. I actually went into ADAPT for a little bit. where then in ADAPT, I was sent to 1617 Reading Road. So I did 90 days in 1617 Reading Road, then went back to Pathways, where then I was getting probation violations for little rules that I just could not follow. So I went on the run in about 2011. Yeah, 2011. I managed on the year that I was on the run from drug court, I managed to work. I managed to pay for a hotel that I lived in. And I managed not to use opiates. I was smoking weed, but I managed not to use opiates. There was who would eventually in the future become my girlfriend. She ended up turning me in to probation. And in 2012, she turned me in. And at that time, I went into jail. And instead of River City, I got my charge. And was in the Justice Center for 30 days, and I ended up going to Marysville in prison for 46 days. That was the remaining amount on my charge for 6 months. So went into prison, did my 46 days, which was literally felt like life to me. Got out of prison in March of 2013. Immediately got a job. My sister and her husband was kind enough to put me up in a hotel. The job that I was working at when I got arrested took me back. Let's see. For the next year, I guess, I did pretty well. I ended up getting an apartment. I got a different job. Got my license back. And was doing really well for the most part. I was smoking weed, so I wasn't totally clean, but I was not using opiates, which opiates are my downfall. I was doing pretty well. Cut to the girl who turned me in, who would end up. Anyways, she was in prison. She got out of prison in January 2014 and moved in with me. So for a couple months, again, I was still smoking weed, occasionally drinking, and she was using heroin. We would argue about it, because I told her that, that was absolutely a definite no, couldn't happen. So cut to March 1st, 2014. I'll never forget that day. The disease got to me. It made me believe that the smart idea would be to go out and get dope myself from a neighbor who I knew could get it. And then that way we wouldn't argue anymore. And everything would be happy. And I'll just use that one time. Because we all know that never works. So March 1st, 2014 would start me on a 3-year active addiction run that brought me to my lowest. During these 3 years, I did just about anything to make sure I wasn't sick. I stole, I lied to friends and family to get money. I did some stupid stuff, some really stupid stuff in this 3 years. Also, in those 3 years, I overdosed, I believe, probably 6 times. The first time was pretty bad. I probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my ex, had she not found me soon enough. I'm pretty sure I died in that first overdose. After going to the hospital for that, I discovered that I was Hep C positive. Something that we had at the beginning tried not to happen, but when you're sick and you just cannot even spend an extra minute to clean the needle, you don't even care. Just go ahead. I'll just take it as is. You just used it, that's fine. I mean, Hep C is curable. It's fine. Everything's fine. I just need to get well. So that was my first overdose. We were living with a friend of mine who took us in because I'd lost the apartment. And I could hear my ex in the other room with the paramedics saying that I had just been depressed and I had some Vicodin and I took some Vicodin to try and kill myself because we couldn't let my friend know that we were doing heroin. There was no way he would kick us out. So I could hear this, so I just went with it. Like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And then the paramedics were like, well, how many did you take? And I'm like 7 or 8. Like, you more than likely probably could not overdose off of 7 or 8 pills. So, but as soon as I got into the ambulance, I fessed up and told them that it was heroin. Anyways, I get out of the hospital and I have the best intentions to not use again. But of course, that's all that was on my mind. I was starting to get sick. So I just went right back to using. In those 3 years, I had tried to get on subs several different times, which each time it only turned into a money-making opportunity. I never stuck with it. It was just a way to get extra income every month. We eventually ended up losing the roof over our head at that place, at where I stayed with my friend, because we were stealing from them, and it's probably one of the times in active addiction that I regret the most was stealing from him, because he literally would have done anything for anyone. And seeing the hurt in his eyes when we left, that was... So we always managed to always get a roof over our head somehow or another, but it was a struggle. During those 3 years, I would make several trips to Walmart and would steal to either sell it or we'd get a list from the dope boy and go and steal Walmart, Kroger's, you name it, just about anything. Doing things that, like how I was not even raised. When I was a kid, one time, it's a funny story. We were in Kmart and there was a box of crayons that were open on the shelf. And I took one crayon, and I get into the car, we get into the car, my mom turns around and she's like, where did you get that crayon? I was like, it was just on the shelf. She's like, did you pay for it? No. She made me go in there by myself, alone. I was maybe 9, maybe 10 years old, and made me go back into the store, go up to the desk, return the crayon, and apologize. So stealing was not something that I'm very proud of. But whatever it took, because I know for a fact I wasn't going to be sick. And I've done a lot of crazy stuff in addiction, but one of the things I would not sink to was selling my body. So if I had to steal, then that's the way it was. If I had to lie to get the money, then that's what I was going to do. So we had a 3-year run. I had a 3-year run in active addiction. I was, towards the end, I was so depressed that I could barely get out of bed. I could barely get out of bed to try and hustle for money for dope. We were being threatened with losing the roof over our head again, and I had nowhere to go at the time. So I went to rehab in Dayton, and that was a 3-month stay. I believe this time around, I believe I worked recovery harder than I ever had before. If one of the counselors had said, write a 1-page paper on something about addiction, I wrote 2 pages. I believe I came out of there stronger. I graduated successfully from the program, from Woodhaven. And I believe I was pretty strong in my recovery, but if I look back at it now, the whole entire time up there, all I continued to think about was, oh, when I get out, I'm going to use one more time. One more time. Also, while I was up there, my ex broke up with me, which, I mean, it was hard. I'd spent 3 years with her, but to be honest, towards the end, we were just friends. Towards the end, I mean, I didn't care about anything else but the drugs at the time, so. So I went into sober living. This was June 2017. It was a horrible sober living house. It was probably the worst sober living house I've ever been in. But I got a job immediately, but it wasn't a good job. I wasn't happy. And again, my mind was just continually like, let's get high, let's get high, let's get high. So that's what I did. I went downtown, watched all the other addicts where they went, and that's where I went. Ended up getting kicked out of sober living. And at this point, I had burned bridges with everybody. I had no one to help me. my sister actually, and that's another thing I wanted to bring up, was one of the biggest regrets is that I have two nieces and a nephew, and back then, I was mad at my sister, but now I totally understand what she had done. But she had cut me off back early in my 3-year run. She didn't like who I was with, and even though I didn't announce that I had relapsed, she probably knew. So before, when I didn't go a whole week without seeing them, this is 3 years that I had not seen my nieces and nephew, and that was really hard. That was just another reason to just continue to get high, to mask the pain. So I had burned every bridge, family, friends, you name it. I had nothing. So I get kicked out of sober living, and I had nowhere to go. At first I slept like right around the corner from sober living outside, and then I eventually found my way downtown, because that's where the drugs were. So this starts my year homeless. It started out with me having probably like 2 backpacks and eventually getting things stolen from me. I guess another homeless addict out there befriended me, and he kind of showed me the ropes, I guess, a little bit of how to be homeless on the streets of downtown Cincinnati. Showed me where the safest place to sleep, because apparently at first I was sleeping in a bad part up near OTR. Showed me how to make money by flying a sign. Just showed me the ropes of being out there. And something that I never thought would ever have happened to me, to be homeless. I like that when I was younger, that's not something that you dream of or that you think would ever happen to you. But here I am at 47 at the time, 48, and I am homeless. I am a homeless heroin addict in the streets of downtown Cincinnati. So here I am. I'm down on one of my corners that I stood on was the corner of Main and 6th, downtown in front of Einstein Brother Bagels. I'm flying a sign, begging for money. Sometimes there was stealing involved if that was necessary. I didn't want to, because going to jail, dope sick, was very scary. I just did not want that to happen. So, that was September of 2017 is when I became homeless, living on the streets of downtown Cincinnati. That winter was brutal, but luckily I had attempted to get into the women's shelter on Reading Road, and I did. I got in there, where I was also told I had not been homeless long enough to get any kind of assistance with housing. And And if I could have stopped doing drugs, I probably could have made the best of that situation and gotten a job and done everything that I was supposed to do. But no, I got up every morning, at 5 a.m., got dressed, walked all the way downtown from the women's shelter on Reading Road, and went to fly my sign at the corner of Main and 6th. That was my spot. And my whole entire day was just hustling for the money. If I didn't get it by flying a sign, I went out and verbally asked for money, which I never really liked to do, but I did it. I pretty much stayed quiet, didn't bring much attention to myself. Where I stood, there was a lot of office people that would pass me, and I always tried to stay positive while I was out there flying a sign. Good morning, have a good day, have a nice day, whatever. Made sure I kept my head up, smiled. I felt like that was probably the best way to get any money. But people would stop and ask me, like, what was my story? And you don't seem homeless, and why are you out here? So I kind of made a connection with a lot of people out there. Some of them were the downtown ambassadors who go around and clean the city, and they would stop and talk to me sometimes. Sometimes they had to wake me up in the morning. That's their job. And I told them, just jokingly, like, oh, what's this job, And I told them, I was like, once I get my crap together, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna apply. And they're like, okay. But, so I ended up getting kicked out of the women's shelter because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And that was in January of 2018, right in the middle of winter. Luckily, the cold shelters were still open, so that's where I'd go every night, is to one of the churches, and I'd sleep there. But come March 1st, I believe it is, they closed the cold shelters. So that took me out onto the street. And again, I'm still, every morning, I don't miss a day. Every morning I'm up at 5 a.m. And if I did it right the day before, I have a wake up to get me well in the morning. And I'm back out there hustling for whatever I needed for the day. So that took me to, there was a couple guys I knew that were underneath a bridge, that slept underneath a bridge. And those guys, I felt like I trusted those guys, so I ended up going to their bridge, which is under 71 off of Gilbert Avenue. So that became my new home, a bridge, underneath a bridge. It was like every night, before I got well, before I went to bed, I would think about, like, why am I here? What, I just cannot even believe that I am actually out here homeless on the street, sleeping underneath a bridge. It just blew my mind. But then as soon as I did my dope, that I didn't even care anymore. So I got through the rest of the winter sleeping outside. Luckily, a lot of those people that passed me every morning gave me blankets. I told them, hey, I'm out here. So they brought me blankets in. That was awesome. So sometime in the spring of 2018, The Downtown Ambassadors had an outreach program, and one of their outreach officers passed me one day where I was flying, and they had another gentleman with them who worked for City Gospel, and they stopped to tell me about a program that they were starting up called the Jobs Van that would go around and pick up 10 homeless from the streets. You'd work for the day picking up trash somewhere in the city, and you'd get paid $45. Are you interested? I was like, yeah, definitely. Definitely. So they were like, well, we're planning on starting this later in the summer, so just be on the lookout for it. I was like, yeah, definitely. So I just continued on my daily insanity cycle of getting up early in the morning, hustling for money, hustling for the dope. Cut to July, the van starts up. I didn't get picked up the first day, and I was pretty upset about it. But I got picked up a few days later, was able to work, made the $45, so it was perfect. And Jim, he's the guy who ran the van, he'd do a little bit of outreach also, let us know that he can help us get into rehab, get into a program somewhere. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do that. I definitely want to do that. But it still wasn't ready. Still the dope had a control on me. I was tired, but I wasn't yet ready. So got through most of the summer. It was increasingly harder and harder to hustle every day for money. So one of the outreach workers with the Downtown Ambassadors, I got with them, and I was like, look, I'm ready, can you get me into the cat house? And they're like, yeah, sure, definitely. And they paid my way, helped me get into it, which I got into it. And, 4 days in, 3 days, I can't even remember, I was in a Valium haze with the withdrawal meds. I just decided, I was like, oh no, I gotta go. I gotta go. I can't be here anymore. So I left there. Went back out on the street. And it was just as horrible as it was before I went in to the cat house. Things didn't get any better while I was gone. So I went for another 2-week run, Jim's still in the back of behind me, like, whenever you're ready, just let me know. So it was cut to about 2 weeks later. I did another 2 weeks out on the street, hustling. Cut to about 2 weeks later. It was raining. It was a crappy morning. I wasn't making any money. I made just a little bit, and the dope boy sold me just a little bit to get well. And that morning I had texted Jim, ask him if he could bring me a poncho because it was raining. He's like, yeah, sure, definitely. I'll get back with you when I get back out. So here I am. I'm in the bathroom of the library doing my little bit that I was able to get for the day. And he texts. He's like, where are you? I'm like, oh, crap. I'm in the library. He's like, well, all right, I'm about to pull up. About to pull up. That's what the dope boy always says. So I go outside. I meet him. He's like, what are you doing today? I was like, nothing. It's raining. It's a crappy day. I'm doing absolutely nothing today. Same old that I do every day, trying to hustle for the money. And he's like, well, he's like, I'm getting ready to go pick up someone else, and I'm going to take them to, oh, I'm pretty sure I don't have the name right, but addiction counseling services, something like that. And we're going to get them into the engagement center. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't have anything else planned for the day, and I don't know, something in me just clicked, like, yeah, let's do this. So I got in his van for the last time, and went up there. They got me into the engagement center, and that's where I wanted to go. Me personally, I felt like I didn't need any more groups. That was one of the things that kind of scared me away from the cat house was so many groups, and that's just me personally. It's not something that I endorse with everybody to do. Like I recommend people to go and get those groups. And I wanted a short stay just to detox. So the engagement center was it. I went into the engagement center, detoxed for probably longer than what they thought I probably should have been sleeping, but that's how I get through detox, is sleeping. And while in there, I talked with counselors, case management. They got me into sober living afterwards. I originally was put on the Vivitrol shot, so I had to sign up for groups so I get that Vivitrol shot. And when I got into sober living, I tried the groups for a little bit, just not something I wanted to do. So I had a 30-day Vivitrol shot, and that was about it. After that, I quit the group, so I didn't continue on with Vivitrol. I also did not detox with the help of Suboxone or anything. So I had some goals for myself when I got out, and I knew, like, if I didn't meet those goals, like, not that I wouldn't succeed, but those were just goals that I needed. Like, my very first, so the Downtown Ambassadors, or the outreach guy, he had mentioned to me, he's like, why don't you apply here, once you get your crap together? And I was like, yeah, definitely. So that's what I did. That was my first place I went to apply, was for the Downtown Ambassadors, which they currently was not hiring at that time. So I got another job. One of my goals was I had to make at least 11 or more an hour, or else I just wasn't. It would just be the same cycle of, I will never get out of sober living. I won't make enough money to get an apartment and get the things that I needed. That was my goal. So I stuck with it. I got a job that paid about almost $11 an hour, and I just patiently waited. I was in a great sober living house, very successful. A very successful house known as the Castle, New Foundations. Surrounded by a great group of women. Like, they were awesome, but I have a tendency to be really quiet and shy, so I didn't socialize much, but that's something that I'm continually working on. Eventually, about two months later, I guess, the Downtown Ambassadors contacted me. I went and interviewed, and I got that job with them. it was kind of a way, I look at it as a way for me to give back to the city that kind of put up with me for a year. Kind of a way to pay back the people that helped me while I was out there, gave me money. It's a job, I still have it. It's a job that I love. Is now with a different company, who is an amazing company, 3CDC, who I'm trying to remember the motto, but it's to better the city by improving the city. So it's an amazing company. I'm extremely happy where I am. So I am 21 months and 13 days clean today from all mind-altering substances. I now have an apartment. I have a car that I make all my payments on time every month. It's crazy. Like, even back before I screwed up my life, my payments would always be a little late. But now it's just like I must pay this on time. Everything else I'll go without, but I must pay these bills on time. So that's crazy. So yeah, my life today is, I don't know what clicked this time around, but something clicked. I'm just tired of it. I'm too old for it. I don't know, but today, it's totally different today. I mean, yes, there have been occasions where, I've thought about using. I've gone through some rough physical things with the Hep C, which I am now cured of. I went through that procedure, but that gave me, after I got clean, boy, that Hep C gave me a run for my money. Let me tell you, it had the disease like knocking on my door, like saying, "Yo, you didn't feel like this when you were using, so maybe you should use." But absolutely, no matter what, I will not put anything in me today. I look around at what I have, and the relationships that I'm rebuilding back up. Like today, I'm talking with my nieces. They are in my life, which is, I'm going to try not to cry, but they are the most important things. I don't even know. I'm going to try not to cry. I'm going to cry if I talk about it. But considering where I was back in that 3-year run, and my sister cut me off with them, which I totally understand why she did it. I don't hold nothing against her. Today, I understand. But I missed my oldest niece's graduation, and boy, was I mad about that. But today, none of that matters, because today, now I have a relationship with them, and I'm building that back up, and I'm able to be there for them. My sister still doesn't talk to me, but that's all right. That's all right. I'm sure she knows I love her, and I'm sure she loves me, but for right now, that's her process. Sometimes I want to regret everything that I went through, but I think it's made me the person I am today. I believe I'm a stronger person than I was in 2000, before all of this happened. And I have a lot of gratitude towards the Jobs van, Jim, all the people that passed me daily while I was out there that would stop and take a moment and talk to me and just ask, like, why are you out here? That means a lot. And today I am a downtown ambassador, and now today I am able to be out there and hopefully be a hope shot for some of the addicts that are still out there on the street. The other morning I had to wake a couple of the homeless up who sleep underneath this awning across from our office. So I had to wake them up, and the one gentleman, I didn't know him from when I was out there, but he was really slow in getting up, and he just looked really tired. And I asked him, I was like, "Are you tired yet?" And sometimes he could give me an attitude when I wake him up. But, he shook his head yes, that he was tired. And I asked him, are you ready to surrender? Are you ready to go do something about it? And he shook his head no. And but I'll continue to ask him. I won't stop. But I have several of them that come up to me a lot and ask to be in touch with our outreach program. There are still a few that are still out there from when I was out there. Some have passed away, and some have gotten clean. And that's what gets me up every day, and that's why I love the job that I do. Not only do I love my city and I love to keep it clean, but it gives me a chance to be out there with the addicts that are still out there suffering. I don't know, that's my story. I hope I didn't jump around too much, but it's, we do recover. We do recover.